Live from Iona College, welcome to Sports Unfiltered, first edition on the radio. I am your host, Jake DeMesa.
I'm Joe Sorrentino.
And I'm Matthew George.
And we're coming all the way from YouTube. We've been doing this for a year. Finally glad to be back, and we're going to start this with the NHL season preview.
All right. So, let's start. Let's talk about the arguably much better team in New York, the New York Rangers.
Well, I could argue that.
We'll start with Jimmy Vesey. This was somebody highly touted by about 10 teams in the NHL.
Yeah, the former Hobie Baker Award winner. I mean, last guy to win that, Jack Eichel. You see what he's doing in the league now.
Yeah, and
so
it's something that the Rangers sort of swooped in on last minute. Their names weren't mentioned at all before. It was usually people were saying the Islanders were going to grab them, but after that, the Rangers just swooped in, and I remember waking up, checking my phone, and bang, Jimmy Vesey to the Rangers.
And the move still confuses me, honestly. Like, yes, I'm an Islander fan. I say that all the time on YouTube. But the thing about Jimmy Vesey, and it confuses me why he did this, he got drafted by the Nashville Predators 3 years ago. He decided not to sign with them. He gets traded to Buffalo. He decides not to sign with them. And he becomes an unrestricted free agent. He gets to choose where he goes. If I'm Jimmy Vesey, at this point I'm thinking either I want to play for a contender or I want to play for a young team I could build with. And I feel like the Rangers are kind of a middle-of-the-pack team that's not that young.
I think he can make them a contender.
And a team that's not a Stanley Cup contender this year.
Okay, all right. I do think the Rangers are going to be sneaky good this season. And I know they lost Brassard. Brassard was my favorite player on the Rangers. He was completely the most consistent player on the Rangers, and to lose him was a questionable decision. I guess it was a salary dump, but it was just it was a bad move.
But they get Zibanejad from Ottawa, who I do think is a really good player. I mean, he had the fastest hat trick in Ottawa in Senators history last year.
Yeah.
2 minutes and 30 seconds about. So Zibanejad, very underrated player. I think Ranger fans are going to like him this year.
Yeah, I think he's going to be just like he's going to slot in as another Matt Zuccarello. I think same play style. He scored a goal. What was it, last night against the Islanders? It was a one-timer. It was an excellent goal. And I really do think he's going to look nice in a Rangers uniform. I think Vesey's going to look nice in a Rangers uniform, and I think this team is going to look good on the ice.
But Jake, I thought you would be kind of upset about the performance with the Islanders.
I mean, it's preseason, and if you look at the New York Islanders, you look at John Tavares playing for Team Canada in the World Cup of Hockey. Actually,
Absolutely,
World Cup of Hockey.
The stat line doesn't do justice to how much Canada controlled the puck yesterday. It was ridiculous.
I mean, and also Team Europe, Thomas Greiss, Jaro Halak, 2 Islander goalies there. Europe, I mean, they're mismatched against Canada. We saw them lose 4-1 back in the preliminaries, but, you know, the World Cup, it's not really a big deal at this point to Americans. So that's why we're going to move on from it, and we're going to talk about the Islanders. Yeah. You look at the Islanders last night, they lose to the Flyers very badly. They lose to the Rangers also, but it's split squads, and you're missing your 2 goalies and Tavares, so you can't look at preseason that much, especially this early. As a whole, though, obviously losing Franz Nielsen, Kyle Oposo, and Matt Martin, replacing them with Jason Chimera, Andrew Ladd.
Who I think is I think Jason Chimera is extremely underrated.
Yeah.
He's one of the to see somebody that big and that quick. I loved him on Washington, and I hate the Capitals. It's I mean, a lot of New Yorkers do, but I loved him on the Capitals. He was a right winger that could have complemented any line on that team, and I think he's an excellent player, and I think he's an excellent addition. He fits the play style of the Rangers perfectly. If he wants to be a form of goal-scoring enforcer there, I think he could do that. He's big enough to do that, and he's quick enough to do that. I think he's a great player. It's a great addition. I think he'll fit in well.
Yeah, and the guy scored 20 goals last year and 38 years old. I mean, Jason Chimera still has a lot left in the tank.
Yeah.
Andrew Ladd, a guy who doesn't fill up the stat sheets, but he does a lot of things that are outside of the box score.
He's big.
Exactly, yeah. He could hit, he could play defense. He doesn't have the same skill, but he plays like a Jonathan Toews. That kind of two-way forward. I mean, it's a bad comparison because Toews is a much better player and much younger at this point, but that's the kind of player Andrew Ladd is, and he brings a lot to the team that you do not see in the score sheet. Kind of like a Cal Clutterbuck, Casey Cizikas, those kind of players. And also the other guy, P.A. Parento, 2 60-point seasons back with John Tavares. So if he can regain that chemistry with Tavares, you're looking at a team that could be better than last year's team, even without some of their key pieces.
Yeah, but if you want to talk about how these players are off the stat sheet type guys, don't you need a decent amount of on the stat sheet type guys?
That's where Parento comes in. That's where Tavares comes in. That's where you need a bounce back year from a Ryan Strome and Anders Lee, and then also the 3 rookies there: Matthew Barzal, Michael Michael Dow Cole, Josh Hosang. You need one of them to step up. And
I really do think Hosang is going to be the best of the three. And a lot of people are saying Barzal is going to be, a better player now because he looks better now than Hosang. But it's how young are they? What are they in the early 20s, very early 20s?
yeah.
You can't talk about them as if they're gonna break out onto the scene and just be the best player in the NHL. It's not gonna happen.
I mean, Matthew Barzal, he slipped in the draft to 13 when the Islanders got him because of an injury, but he was supposed to be a top 5 pick. So this is a guy who could be an elite talent in the NHL.
Yeah, and if you McDavid on the Oilers, like Eichel on Buffalo, those are elite talents. And I do think they could slot in just as good as them, but I think McDavid is the next Wayne Gretzky, and everybody's too afraid to say that.
It's a bit early to say that.
I think
next
he's
Sidney
going
Crosby,
to be.
maybe.
Have you seen the effect McDavid had on his team when he was healthy? It was ridiculous. He turned an Oilers team into a competitive team.
I still think that if he stayed healthy last year, the Oilers would definitely make the playoffs.
Yeah, and that's crazy. Who would have said the Oilers would make the playoffs last season? I think that's crazy, and I think that's a huge deal. He could turn any team into an instant contender. It's crazy.
And flipping things a little bit, going to the Oilers, who just happened to make that Griffin Reinhardt trade a couple years ago that got the Islanders Barzal. They made another trade this offseason, which was the best 2 minutes in hockey, 20 minutes in hockey ever, when they traded Taylor Hall for Adam Larson.
Yeah, that was a disaster for the Oilers. But damn, the Devils are going to be a team to look at this season. Adam Henrique, who is aging, but he's still one of the
still one very underrated player in the league.
Yeah, and now you add Taylor Hall. You have a stellar defense. It's scary.
And I'm someone who thinks that Corey Schneider is a top 3 goalie. I mean,
Yeah.
when he's out there, he's a workhorse. He plays more games than almost anybody. When he's out there, you have a chance to win every single night.
Yeah, and Schneider is very underrated as well. I mean, we always look at the top goalies in the NHL. We see Carey Price, talk Henrik Lundqvist, but we need to start looking at these younger kids. Corey Schneider how young is he? He's pretty young, right?
He's still in like 27, 28 area.
Yeah, and he has an impact for his team that makes the Devils quasi-competitive, every night.
Yeah.
And even when they were bad, Corey Schneider was good.
Exactly. I was about to say the Devils did struggle for a couple years now, but they were very lucky to move on from Marty Brodeur to Corey Schneider. They never really had a problem in the net.
Yeah, and not only that, the Devils are the type of team that it's weird not seeing them in the playoffs, but it's weird seeing them in the playoffs.
And I feel like this year that will change. The Devils will make the playoffs.
I think they definitely make the playoffs. I think they're going to be 10 times more competitive than what we're thinking. I think they're going to give trouble to a lot of top teams.
Definitely, yeah.
I mean, I hope they don't turn out like the Arizona Diamondbacks of hockey, but I mean, I really do think that they could be very competitive next season. So we'll move on. We'll go to our the hockey season hasn't even started yet, folks, but we're going to go to our way too early Stanley Cup predictions, and I'm going to start. If you've ever watched Sports Unfiltered, and I'm sure you haven't. We don't get a lot of viewers, but if you're listening right now, last season I made a fool of myself. I said the Rangers and Kings would make the Stanley Cup, and I said the Rangers in 7, and that was a god-awful prediction. But what I'm going to say this year, and it's going to break every Rangers heart, but I do think the Islanders are going to make the Stanley Cup. And I think the West is Chicago has to make it, I guess, right? They make it every other year. They're gonna win. So
I guess that's kind of the thing, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm gonna say Chicago Blackhawks, New York Islanders. The Islanders still have that magic coursing through their veins after that Tavares wraparound. And I do think the Islanders are going to be a team that is going to be looked at as the team that always chokes, and next year they're finally going to rip the bone out of the back of their throat and throw it at the other teams and going to make it to the finals. I don't know if they could beat Chicago, but Andrew Ladd knows how to beat them. He was on them.
That is true.
So I think it's going to be the emphatic Chicago Blackhawks against the dull yet exciting, contradictory New York Islanders.
And for me, I mean, I picked the Lightning to make it last year. I'm going to go with them again, though. because Stamkos comes back. Druin, he looked awesome in the playoffs last year. Having those two together, if Druin plays like that,
They played better without Stamkos last year.
they did, but you don't know how this team is going to play with Stamkos because he was injured. He played one game in the playoffs, that Game 7 that they lost. So he might have been a little rusty. If Druin plays like he did in the playoffs, this team is unstoppable. So I'm going to stick with them, and then I guess I'm going to have to agree with you with the Blackhawks, but also the LA Kings, down year last year, they lost in the first round of the Sharks. They can easily bounce back and make it too. So I'm going to go with actually Lightning Kings.
All right. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk some of the NFL. We're going to talk New York. We're going to talk about fantasy sleepers. We're going to bring everything you want to hear about New York football and fantasy football all in one when we come back.